All right, so let's get started. Um, Really excited to connect with everyone today. I'm Taylor Reagan, Director of UX and Product Design at SPR. Julia Bosco, our Sales and Community Engagement Specialist, has worked tirelessly with today's speaker and our marketing team to organize today's event. So big thanks to Julia. And if you have any follow-up questions or requests, please feel free to contact her. Also, just a quick shout out to Desma and Kristen, leaders on our sales and marketing team, without whom things just might descend into darkness and chaos. So thank you both for all your support. To kick things off today, we're going to do a quick collaborative warm up in FigJam. I will go ahead here in a minute and put the link in the chat. And then we'll dive into the presentation with an open discussion. So just a few quick things about SPR. We're a technology modernization firm that specializes in modernizing existing app experiences or building out custom solutions, really, based on the needs of the organizations that we partner with. So we take a very collaborative approach to our partnerships. And by nature, we are advisory, so we have a lot of open communication with our clients. And pragmatically, we right-size solutions to meet our partners where they're at and really deliver ongoing value beyond the build and the solutions that we're delivering. So today's speaker, Rich Hultman, is a senior innovation and UX leader at IBM. One of the first things that struck me about Rich was his ability to really simplify and explain complex topics. And during our first conversation, I actually thought to myself, this guy would make a great teacher. It turns out Rich actually teaches UX at Northwestern University. During his 20 years in the industry, he has created experiences for companies like Target, GE, Motorola, and I believe Allstate. IBM Rich spearheads their innovation work with IBM's customers and partners, and really leads teams in workshop facilitation and customer experience focused solutions for Watson data and AI experiences. A few quick notes before we dive in that we wanted to share out that we feel is important. Machine learning and predictive models are still widely used and adopted by businesses today, right? So it's not just about generative AI, which is, of course, very popular right now, and is a big surge in all of the pre-trained transformer models, excuse me. AI is, we need to remember, it's only as good as the data that you use to train and teach it. So when using design thinking for creating AI solutions, it's really an opportunity for UX pros to identify those intersections between the types of problems being solved and the types of data sets best suited to solve them in collaboration with data scientists. Now, even though you're all muted, everyone here has a voice and everyone brings something unique to the table. So with that, let's go ahead and transition into our FigJam board. And I'm gonna move pieces around on the puzzle here. Let me put the link in the chat here. You don't need an account to log in. Let me grab this link again. And then I'll pull open the board as well. So go ahead and click the link in the chat, and you should be able to pop into the FigJam board. I'll get everybody seconds to dive in. Really would like to, one, tell us how you're feeling today. How's your day going? How's your week going? Everybody grab a sticky and give us a shout out. How are you feeling today? And if you want, feel free to leave your first name and just tell us what's going on. I'm going to give everybody a minute to click and type. Tell us how you're doing.
I love seeing all this activity.
Yeah, it's awesome. This is great. All right, gonna give you guys like 20 more seconds. All right. So it looks like people are feeling pretty good. Nailing a presentation to the boss. That is always good. People are under the weather. I can relate to that. Um, excited, curious, feeling a little behind the AI game. That's okay. We're gonna get you caught up. Slept really bad. I know exactly how that feels. Well, it's awesome to be here. It's awesome to have you. If everyone can scooch on over to this green board, I want to give everybody a minute. What is one of the things that you're most excited about with regards to AI? What excites you the most? I'm going to give everybody a minute. Type your thoughts, and then we'll go from there. This is awesome. Lots of good stuff in here. Really good stuff. Okay, about 10 more seconds. All right. So there's some really interesting things here. Lots of different use cases, autonomous agents, speeding up workflows, how to best integrate AI with my design process, thinking about the ways it can unburden the design process, lots of different use cases for clients, new capabilities, new solutions unlocked. This is all great. So let's go ahead. We've got one more before we pass the mic to Rich. In kind of contrasting, what are your biggest concerns with AI and everything that's going on in the market and the industry? From your perspective, what really concerns you the most? So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys 60 seconds to do that. There's some great stuff coming up here too. Really good thoughts. Mm. About 5 more seconds. All right. Is it dulling our ability to critically think? That's a good one. Should be a tool, not a crutch. A lot of notes. I think there's a lot of alignment around ethics. Um, not ethical usage, lack of regulation, accuracy. That's the thing I was thinking about this morning. It'd be great to see the sources of data that are feeding the model when you interact with it. That would be helpful. This is great. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to do that with us. I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to Rich. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Rich, feel free to take it away. They've heard enough from me.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks, Julia. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We appreciate everybody who's registered and joined. This is super exciting. I am humbled the fact to be able to do this. I'm also here not only by myself, but I'm also here with Shad Griffin, who is a distinguished data scientist at IBM. Shad and I, since I've been at IBM, I've had the opportunity to work with Shad, and it's super important for designers and data scientists, technology product people to work together, and that's what we'll talk about today for sure. So again, I'm Rich Hultman. I am a senior, what's called a senior innovation designer, but background in UX throughout most of my career, and even before UX, I studied visual design. Actually, visual design and computer science in school was kind of my combination. That was an uncommon combination. You were either on either side of the industries at that point in time. But I had seen computers that were drawing vectors on them, and that was like the most exciting thing at the same time. I'm just excited that we're in this point from a design standpoint and from a technology standpoint where we are doing collaborative work with teams. And IBM in general has taken this on, that design is very highly valued at IBM. Design from a critical thinking type standpoint. So I think that there was a comment in there, are we becoming numbed in our critical thinking with AI? And there was just reading an article this morning that is it's called The Designer's Dilemma. And there was quoted about Paul Rand, who's a famous graphic designer. And he basically said, it is up to, I would not only take it to designers, but I would take it to product sales, engineers, data scientists, that it's all up to us to become even more critical thinkers throughout the process. So that's what we'll kind of talk a little bit about here. So applying design thinking to AI. So what does that really mean? So design thinking for AI focuses on solving problems for people, aligning your teams, and identifying data sources to build a solution that is responsible and provides actual benefits to the user. So in your FigJam, you kind of mentioned some of these things. So some of the things we want to be able to use the AI for is to do more in less time, right? So we think about the things that we've been doing. We want to be able to automate those, gain insights into complex data. So nowadays, data is more complex than ever for not only us individuals, but for organizations. So we're grappling with this data. We need a way to basically augment that data. We want to be able to predict certain courses of action. And there's something that if we get a chance to talk a little bit, that's about what we'll call about prediction based upon behaviors and intent, which are really two separate things. And then provide tailored experiences for your customers. So if we think about a customer 360 view, if you have that more data, you can surface this up to customers. How do you use AI for that? But this all requires responsibility and forethought. So why is design thinking important to AI? Well, again, so if I do just a quick little poll, and this is my poll that I was thinking about earlier, can I maybe get either emojis, or on who is a designer in the group? So I'll start out with designers. So if I can get some kind of reactions, okay. All right, so I've got a few there. All right, how many are engineers? So like either data scientists or programmers that are on the engineering side, whether you're front end or back end, doesn't matter. Okay, and then how many are product, either product, business, or sales? Kind of break it up into those three groups. Okay, so we have, it looks like we have a cross section for both. So what does the design thinking allow us to do then? So design thinking allows us to work, allows diverse teams to work together. So as a business team, as a design team, as a technology team, we have not all the answers as a single person, right? We work together as a group, and that's why design thinking is so important for building AI. There's common scenarios that we hear where the executive team says, put AI into it, right? We need AI into our applications. And creating AI for the sake of AI isn't generally going to solve the problem. And as I always say, like from the design team at IBM, one of our jobs is to help our business and sales teams be able to make sure that the right products get implemented. So we do things like facilitation sessions with organizations. We support organizations like SPR when they're out working with their customers in helping go through what we'll call root cause analysis. And then this will allow teams to plan together. So that's important that everybody plans together so we know where we're going as a team. And then most importantly, it allows teams to execute together. Now, as a business person, as a designer, are you as much in do you have your hands in the pie or in the dough in making at the back end? Maybe, maybe not, but everybody needs to be along in the process. Data scientists, engineers, do you have as much of your hands in the donut making dough process up front? Yes, but maybe not as much because there may not be insights. But do we all need to get to the point where we are at that point? Because I think the tools, as we start to develop these things, will become even more automated. So it will allow lines of business teams to be able to create applications or use low code, no code applications to be able to get those efficiencies that they're looking for. So one second here, let me click on the slide here. So we use what's called an AI Essentials framework. It looks at the business, the user, and the machine. It still uses design thinking. Design thinking falls in the first half, generally falls in the octagon shape here, which is in the research and brainstorming section. So the things like empathy, define, and ideate to some degree fall within there. That kind of falls in the middle of user and machine. And the machine is definitely ideate, prototype, and test, right? So we're using design thinking. We're just kind of calling it a little bit differently and kind of identifying those. I think when I first started my role here, one of the things that probably wasn't used as much was this research area. We were looking to, spend a lot more time in the machine side. And that I think is when you leave out the research area, basically the interviews with SMEs and stakeholders, that is like one of the biggest holes that you can create. So in this framework, we'll want to look at purpose, align on the business and the user intents for the solution. And then again, the research and brainstorming, which is that first part of design thinking. So uncover the user needs and the value, identify their pain points. We want to make humans better. That's the whole goal with AI, right? So we want to be able to automate this process. And then we actually do need to look at the machine as a persona. So, or the AI that we're creating. We're creating this digital toddler application. So we're going to need to teach it, to train it, and to mentor it. So we kind of go through this process, which is called understanding, reasoning, and knowledge. So determine what you will need to teach the AI. Dream big, but you're going to need to probably execute at what is possible. And then 100%, you always have to test, analyze, tune on expected behaviors because sometimes you get unexpected behaviors. So defining the purpose we tend to go through like a frame and define. So again, very similar. We're in that purpose stage. We'll meet, align, learn teams. We'll identify pain points. I like to interview subject matter experts first before I actually talk to stakeholders. And the main reason is the stakeholders know their business really well. I mean, I come from a design background, so I understand some business, but I don't know the business terminology always, or the business processes 100%. The stakeholders are going to know those, and the subject matter experts are going to know those. So I try to get that information from SMEs first. I always keep in mind that that process or that information can be the way things are done today. So we as humans, the hardest thing for us to do is to change, right? So for if we've been doing a certain thing a certain way, this is what we're most comfortable with. So I try to keep that in mind from a bias standpoint. And then I'll at least have a knowledge base to go talk to stakeholders. And stakeholders know what their pain points are. They want to talk generally about their hopes and their dreams. So by having some basis, this gives you a really good opportunity to talk to stakeholders, then to start to work to uncover root cause. And at this point, we'll all start formulating ideas. And so refining that purpose with the user research, that's really that first step. And it's really uncovering both the human and the machine needs. So we want to be able to uncover both of those. So research and brainstorming. So if you've done design thinking before, you're probably familiar with these. I generally go through a phase of framing, discovery, and solutioning. Framing, which are those first couple meetings. Discovery, which are really those true workshops, which are about what's possible. Now, not every project, depending on where its stage is, will have a full discovery. It depends on the people in the room, and that's what's important. Not only the people from your organization, but you need to have cross-functional people so that you can get through what's possible. And then you can kind of get into solutioning. It's very easy, as you know, if you've done design thinking, that people want to move to solutioning. So that's why these other steps are possible. And then some of the common techniques I'll use in those workshops are very common design thinking sessions, like brainwriting. It's one of my favorite exercises for generating lots of ideas. You do need use cases for that. Crazy Eights, How Might We's, I Wish, What If work great with subject matter experts and stakeholders. They love filling those out. The as-is user scenarios, the technical teams always want to know that. And you can generally get to 2Bs from there, 2B scenarios. Empathy mapping, prototype archetype development. And storyboarding, I really think this is where, if you're a designer, where I actually use this technique a lot to show what we're building, right? We build a story, and I'll draw a picture, and I'll write a description, and then I'll write 3 to 6 tiles that'll be out that'll kind of map that. And by having a picture with an explanation, we take what we call the invisible and now make it visible. I'm a big believer in doing this. This helps align teams early on. And even when you're doing the storyboards, if you're not sure, just do it. I'd rather show something to somebody that's not 100% right and get the feedback, because then I know if I'm going in the right direction or if we're not going in the right direction, or if we're aligning teams in the right direction or not aligning teams in the right direction. So from here, we'll start moving into really kind of that define, that ideate and that prototype testing stage. So one of the things that we'll look at in our AI Frameworks Essential is we'll look at things of like what we have, what we need, and what's nice to have. And those things that what we have, what we want, and what's nice to have can be things that are around public, private, and user data. So this is the information that you're going to use to build the AI, right? Or refine the AI that you have. And it doesn't matter what application you're doing, whether it's a chat bot or whether it's a prediction model or whether it is an analysis, whether it is a situation where you want to be able to try to aggregate documents and bring them together and do some comparison analysis. Any of this, you're going to need to be able to understand of what you have, what you need, and what's nice to have. Public data is that data that's accessible out there in the wild. It could be things like weather. It could be things like geolocations. It could be any of that data that you have or that you need. The private data is generally the data that the organization owns. So this is that, what I would say, that governed data. This is the data that each organization owns, the company or the entity that you're working for has. And then the user data is the data that's related directly to the user. So this is information that's about the humans, about the customers. And this generally becomes some of the more sensitive data, which would be the personal identification information. So this is important data to know because there can be a lot of rules around that. The public data is also sensitive too, because you want to make sure that you're pulling from credible sources and you're not getting data that's not governed or can cause things like what we've heard about, like hallucinations and things like that. Generally, hopefully that private data, which is your company data, hopefully that's governed. But I think that there was a thing in the Fig Jam that talked about data lineage. And there are tools to basically track that lineage of data. And those would be things that you would have to decide, do we have governed data? Do we want covered data? Is it nice to have? You probably want it or at least need to have it. Then from there, we'll go into, once we've got like a lot of these, things that are generated, these nice to haves, we start generating these post-it notes, these stickies, these digital stickies. We will want to start to get into reasoning, right? And the reasoning helps us do things like affinity mapping. It's either known as affinity mapping or clustering. So we want to be able to start building our themes of the things that are important. And our goal is to get to what we call an insight statement. And the insight statement is really that North Star statement of where we're going to go, right? So it'll generally include things like the business opportunity, the problem statement, the user problem statement, and then what success looks like. And we'll take a look at an example of one of those insight statements. So reasoning is discussing, collaborating, and identifying insights into the purpose. Data scientists, designers, technologists, and stakeholders work together to uncover data and user behaviors. And it's important to have that cross-functional group here because everybody brings a different voice and a different lens to what we're building and can take a look at some of those things in the stage, right? So when we get to testing, so like, are we identifying things that are unexpected? Are we identifying personal information? Are we identifying public data that we can use and is accurate? And all of those things are important. All of us have different expertises in that. This is where that critical thinking of all of our organizations, just not designers, are super important that we think through. So we want to calculate what the system will do based on the data we feed it, define the intent statement, and then break down those large ideas into small ideas. So this is, I've got an example of an insight statement. This is a format that I use. I'm using more and more. It's one that I've taught at Northwestern. It's also one that we use, kind of a version that we use at IBM. And then I've started to kind of hybrid this because I really think it gets down to the nuts and bolts of what's important to help align teams. And I've broken it down into 5 sections: the purpose, the understanding, the reasoning, the customers, of which we're always looking at trying to solve, and then the knowledge of our goal, which would be things that could either be qualitative or quantitative. And hopefully you're talking to the lines of business teams or stakeholders so that we can get KPI metrics. This insight statement, when you write insight statements, the goal to writing good insight statements is write bad ones first, right? So it's about just writing the statements and then starting to validate these with teams based upon the data that you've collected. So here I wrote one based upon a very common experience I've been having lately, which is around airplane boarding. And if you think about airlines, they want to be able to create efficient boarding. In fact, there's been a lot of news about numerous major airlines that are changing their boarding process. There's one airline that allows you just to pick whatever seat that you want. You're not assigned a seat. There's another airline that's considering specific way that people go on and board, and that might actually mitigate the fact of like what your status is with that airline. So these decisions that are being made, are they really being made with understanding the customer's behaviors, the customer's needs, and then the factors that are involved in that? So with this insight statement here, if I think about it, right, again, this is a kind of what I call proto one. As a team, we want to improve customer passenger boarding, right? So improve that for online departures. So the airline wants that. That's a good purpose for the airline. The customers want that. They want to have good boarding and for on-time departures because we all want to get to where we go for online. And guess what? The airports want that too because they want the planes to go out efficiently, right? But our understanding is that there are many factors not in our control that cause departure delays, right? So think about things like weather. That's probably one of the other ones. And in fact, if you want to put in the chat, maybe what are some of those factors that are out of your control, right? That could be out of the airline's control. It could be people getting their luggage up into the, in the overhead bins. That could be a major reason. So you would board people based upon like where they're seated rather than getting their luggage in properly and knowing that they had a specific spot. The other thing I noticed on the last time I just flew is that when people were going up to go check into go down the gate, kind of the gateway, is that the lady that was scanning the passes on the phones, she had to scan almost everybody's phone at least 2 times minimum, if not 3 or 4 times, right? So now, does that cause a delay? That's a factor that's not in our control. Maybe it actually helps it out if it's staggered and you don't have people that are waiting. And then, so if we look at our reasoning, right? So by analyzing data points, we want to predict circumstances, right? So this is the number thing. We want to be able to predict these things. So we should know based upon weather patterns of like what things cause delays. When were the last mechanical scenarios? Is the crew available, right? And are they running from different areas? Is that delaying it? Is the plane full? Is the plane not full? We can predict these things by data points, right? And then learn from them based upon trends of where we're at based upon season. So we'll know like Thanksgiving and Christmas, those are probably heavy times. Are we going to have problems with boarding? Probably. If it's in the middle of January, late January, are people traveling as much? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe to Florida, but maybe not to Chicago, right? So by analyzing data points, we want to predict circumstances that cause uncertainty. And by understanding customer behaviors, we can provide operation teams. So the customers, the operation teams, these are the teams we want to be able to help. I would also, if I would start to refine this, I would say we can provide operation teams and the AI application we're building, right, with informed data. So I would probably, if I was to rewrite this, I would add the customers as the operation teams and the AI data with informed data that improves our business and customer needs, the end user being business and the customer needs from there. So I'll just take a quick pause there. I know that all mics are off and stuff. I'll just allow just a little bit of absorption on this. To me, this is a big statement. It allows that North Star pole in the sand. And then it also allows, from a visualization type standpoint, designers like to do storyboards, solution architects like to do drawings. So we're all trying to picture what this is. So a combination with these words and these pictures about what we're trying to build allows us to understand whether we have the data that we need, whether we need to get that, or whether it's not as important. So then from the knowledge standpoint, right, so this is where we've now have all this data, we've affinity mapped it, we've clustered it, right? Maybe we've started to vote a little bit on it. But I look at these things from like what'll be called the layers of AI. So it is a prioritization matrix. So if you've used anything like the Moscow technique to prioritize things, or you've used the traditional model of prioritization of identify things that are the highest value, that are the easiest to do, and the things that are the highest value and the hardest to do. We know we need to do those two things. I still think that's important. Here we'll look at the layers, which are primary, secondary, and tertiary. So the things that we absolutely need are going to be primary. And as we kind of move through it, so for primary, these are the parts you think of first for a product or experience. They are at the heart of the product and are generally intended and known. And then secondary are the parts that are relevant through, though might be stretched for that first iteration. So these end up becoming maybe backlogs, or maybe they go over a little bit primary and secondary. And tertiary are those things that are often found during the testing phases and often unintended or unseen. So this is why the matrix is important to be living. And this is why I love tools like FigJam, Mural, so that you can always be going back to these things and moving these Post-it notes around, right? So the thing that we have to keep in mind when we're doing this is that those with the privilege of creating products have the responsibility of defining ethical primary and secondary effects, as well as forecasting tertiary effects to ensure that they pose no significant harm, which is obviously our big concern. So we also use this process, which is called innovate, co-create. The idea is to define the value and then to prove the value, which creates true value. But what I really believe is that co-creation actually equals innovation, right? So the co-creation process is essential to success. Team members from all disciplines bring a diverse perspective to build that valuable product, right? So out of that, we have 6 core tenets. There's to accelerate research and discovery. So we want to be able to accelerate this. We want to be able to process extensive amounts of data. That's why we're building this. We have extensive amounts of data to work on that matters. It can be unstructured data that becomes structures, allowing researchers to do that most critical insight. So we want to be able to get these insights faster is what we do. Then we want to be able to enrich interactions, train that AI on common requests that create efficiencies. So reducing hours, getting to insights, those are all important things of why we're doing these things. Anticipate and preempt disruptions, right? So continuously monitor the condition of the system. Again, if we think about AI as that toddler, right? This thing that we're building, we just can't just like have a toddler and just expect the toddler to like, okay, you're off, go feed yourself, go to school yourself. You go catch the bus down at the end of the road, which was my scenario when I grew up, right? My mom told me that's kindergarten, end of the road. You got to go catch the bus. That's when things go into trouble. Continuously monitor, teaching, and mentoring, I think, are important. And that's where we get to this fourth part, which is recommend, scale, and learn. So we want to be able to teach the nuances of your business by combining subject matter expertise, add humans in the loop, right? So we want to make sure that it's learning the right way, it's improving the right way, so that what does it do? It improves the humans. So our goal is to improve the humans, to make ourselves more efficient. And I know, when I speak to a lot of people about AI, everybody's worried about, even designers, about losing their job. We talk about generative image creation and things like that. If you'll look at the history of business and manufacturing, anything that was labor intensive, as humans, we've tried to figure out a way to make it more efficient. So like, for example, we look at the automotive industry, the assembly line, when that came about, they were making cars one-off, or motor vehicles at that point, one-off before the assembly line. The assembly line was created. Now they can make multiple vehicles. They can make more of things. It becomes more efficient. It's very big in heavy manufacturing. So heavy manufacturing, things like foundries, for example, that make castings, like person hole covers, right? People hole covers, so that people can get down there and get in there. Those castings are done in front of furnaces, right? And nowadays machines do that mainly because it's risky to have people in front of it, and because people get hurt. People don't want to be in front of these things, and machines and AI software are used to be able to put the molten aluminum or steel into these iron into these furnaces, pull it out, take a photograph it, inspect it to make sure that there's no cracks, it's good or it's bad. And then the humans from there will make sure that all the other things are done. So a lot of times these technologies are used to obviously improve the humans, right? And as we take a look at the history of automation, yes, certain industries where there's labor, I would say intensive labor, those have gone away, right? But it also spawns many new industries. And if we think about things like where we're going in this in space industry, for example, how it's been an explosion, we are going to, as a race, we're going to need AI to be able to help us navigate these environments that we're eventually going to be, even thinking about going like to the moon. We talk about going to Mars. We're going to need AI to keep us safe and help us learn quicker. We, in the fifth one, will want to be able to detect liabilities and mitigate risks. So train to understand and keep up with the changes of regulations and privacy obligations. So these things are always changing. There's regulations and privacy regulations that are in different parts of the world and different states in the US. So the AI is going to be able to help us stay on top of this. And then lastly, governed AI, right? So those with the privilege of creating AI systems are responsible for defining accurate and transparent ethical that it allows traceability. So again, about the ethics, right? So things that are important are accountability, value alignment, explainability, fairness, and user data rights. So if I just take a couple of these and I think about the fairness, if we think about an AI, we've heard about AIs like in the financial industry that do like loan approvals, and like these models aren't always biased, right? So how do these models become traceable, that data lineage, that the data that's behind there that is being accurate and being unbiased? That's up to us to be able to make that happen. User data rights. This is one that I actually think could be a big, huge thing in the ethics standpoint. So AI designed must protect user data rights and preserve the user's power over access and use. So that means a bunch of things. But if I think about the future of AI, if it can help protect us as humans, think about the things like cyber crimes and all these things that are happening. And there is the potential for AI being hacked, and there's a whole nother level of that. But if AI could really help protect us as humans more than we are today, because it almost feels like today, because we're more interconnected, that there is more risk for us as humans. We have to be more cautious. Probably if we look at the history of humanity, there's probably always been risk, but we are just more attuned to it. So how can AI help us be more safe, right? I think some of the other ones, like explainability, we want to be able to perceive, detect, and understand that. So imperceptible AI is not ethical AI, right? So some of the things to consider. So when conducting an AI design thinking workshop, and we're going to actually, I think if you scan a QR code, you scan that QR code and you sign up for that. We have a white paper which I've created, which are workshop starter questions, right? There's 10 of them that I use on a regular basis. So when I'm thinking about starting a workshop, or I need to kind of prepare for them, or if I get tossed into a workshop without knowing that one's going to happen, like it happens like, oh, you're going to go to a workshop tomorrow. I'm like, well, haven't had a chance to prepare for it. I have a list of 10 questions that I use to kind of get myself started. So some are when you want to conduct them is, why are we doing this? How will we maintain the AI over time? Again, the digital toddler, right? What can go wrong? So the people who are creating the AI are responsible for the AI. How biased might the solution be? How do we predict, or how do we protect user data, right? And ask all the questions to drive to root cause. So your 5 whys. So why, and then as the answer comes through, you want to be able to ask why again. I find this as one of the most useful tools possible. It's really about just being curious, and whether you use why up front or you use, another question method to get there, what is on the surface isn't always at the root. So it's really about getting to that root, and why design thinking is so important for AI. And then ask, what does success look like? So again, we understand what the business problem opportunity is. We want to understand the customer need. We're going to identify what the machine needs. But if we do all this stuff, why are we doing this? And what does success look like for doing this? How does it improve the humans? Again, I'll end off with the AI Essentials Framework. Again, the purpose, research and brainstorming, absolutely critical. You want to be able to understand what the teams are trying to uncover. What is the human needs, what is the user needs, and what is the AI needs, and then obviously the machines from there. And okay, I think Taylor, I tried to do that in record time there.
That was amazing.
And then Taylor, I did want to mention that like questions don't just have to be for me. I mean, again, I want to remind that we have a distinguished senior data scientist here. So if you have very specific questions about AI, I have like one of the smartest people that I work with right here. So.
We've been getting questions from folks around, it's critically important to have someone like Shad that's an expert that can do data science, think through envisioning and blueprinting and model solution. What do you do if you're working with a client? How can you approach that if you don't have, like ready access to a data scientist or someone with Shad's expertise?
Yeah, I say find one, right? So I think one of the things, it was one of the first projects that Shad and I worked on together when I first started working at IBM. And again, I was new to some of these technologies. So I mean, like any designer, I mean, my strength at that point was just to ask a lot of questions. And we had a customer that was basically saying we were trying to figure out a predictive application, machine learning predictive application. They wanted to be able to predict certain things. And the VP of data and AI at the customer kept saying that he wanted to understand the customer intent. And I'm like, okay, I understand the customer intent. And like, I kind of thinking through that. I'm like, well, isn't that like what's in somebody's head? Like, isn't that what's in people's head? So I said to Shad, I said, can we actually predict customer intent? And Shad, maybe you want to fill in the answer to my question on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically you can, but you're not going to be near as accurate as when you're trying to predict behavior.
Right.
Because, intent is it changes. I might have attitudes and beliefs in my head, but actions are concrete and they actually exist in the physical world. So they're just a lot easier to predict.
Yeah, and I think that was like for me as a designer, right? So that was a little bit of an epiphany. I mean, it might not seem like a big epiphany, right? But it was huge from the standpoint that, okay, what this one in person believes, obviously a VP wants to understand intent, right? Then I started to realize, like, okay, well, can we do intent? Can we do behaviors? Well, yeah, the answer to that was, yeah, we realized that we didn't have the data we needed to really be able to understand intent. We had the data to be able to do predictive models in behaviors. And then what we started to go through, again, as data science engineers, product people, we started asking more questions of the customer, right? And what we started to realize is their definitions of these terms varied within people within their organization. So we actually had to work as a team to try to get the organization to define their own terms, because they were talking about things that were called something like fill-in, and like everybody in that organization, which was basically an ad hoc customer order, right, was what we ended up determining. But they had to be a customer. They couldn't be a new customer, right? And what we were able to do is start to get those teams. Number one, they had the epiphany. We actually had to stop the workshop and say, okay, we have to define these terms. We have to have you get to alignment to that. Once we define those terms, right, then we were able to start to identify where we would be able to do the predictions. And then the predictions led not only from ad hoc orders, but predicting the ad hoc orders that came in and when they would change to new business, right? So this discussion and this scenario would have taken a lot longer to get there if it wasn't for designer, product people, and data scientists talking together.
Yep. Got a couple of questions fluttering in. We've got about 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
There's a good one. Jeff is asking, AI data sets tend to be out of date by a year or more. How do you consider this shortcoming in your design process? So it'd be a question for you, Shad, like keeping data up to date.
Unfortunately, there's not much you can do. I mean, if your data, any kind of AI is going to reflect the data that it's trained on. So if your data is a year old, there's going to be a gap there. Now, what normally that means in application is that you would have a human involved in the application.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have, like if you wouldn't want to put something that's a year old based on information that's over a year old directly in front of a consumer or directly in front of a patient or whatever your business is. Put it in front of a human and have them interpret it and then tell it to the end consumer is usually what I would recommend.
Okay. So that's a good example, I think, of how you need to have ongoing human intellect involved in any type of artificial intelligence, right?
And it depends on the consequences of being wrong, and kind of getting back to the original question. I mean, I think a lot of the times when AI goes awry, it's not so much it's not so much because they didn't understand the data science, they didn't understand the application. If your AI is wrong, does that literally mean somebody's baby dies, or is it like no big deal?
Right.
And
what are the consequences?
And it's understanding all that to be effective in applying it.
Which is, another great point is that's why you should be having these discussions early, right?
And that's why design thinking and the whole process that Rich went through is so very, very important, because you need to understand this not just from your perspective, but from everyone's perspective, because you can do damage. I mean, you can really damage your organization. You can hurt people physically, with some of this stuff.
Yep. Another question, how do you train it ethically in areas that have been biased in the past? It's a very interesting question. They use the example of insurance or loan approval realm, for instance, or property prices.
Yeah, the only way you can do it is fix it on the back end. So like if you've got, like, let's say you've got historical data that discriminates against a certain ethnic group, that model doesn't know that it's discriminating. It's going to predict it's going to replicate that discrimination. So like there's several tools on the market that will mitigate that after the fact. So it will it's almost like it puts the group in question, or the vulnerable group, kind of in a bucket, and it makes sure that they get their fair share. That's basically what those tools do.
Yep. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead because we've got a few minutes left. Everyone, I'm sharing my screen. You can scan a QR code and get the goodies that Rich has for you. Let's see. I think we have time for one more question. This is a good one. Are there any courses in design thinking and AI? Are there any courses yet, whether it's through IBM or other outlets that people can go and opt
Yeah,
into?
so Taylor, can I do my pitch real quickly? So
Sure, yeah.
yeah, so if you work for an organization that sells technology or services, your organization can become a business partner of IBM. So one of the things that we do is we tend to partner. We have a very strong what we call partner program, and then you get access as a partner. You get access to all of our training. So I used to do like all my trainings like on like lynda.com, all those entities out there, right? We have access through a program that's called Creditly and all these other organizations. So if you have an opportunity to become a business partner, reach out to us, please. Just reach out to us. There are some that are coming out, right? We have to do about almost 200 hours of training a year. So we have our own database of trainings that we have to go through. So I don't get a chance to get out as much of those. But again, I just found this article. There's a lot of articles on Medium and things like that. You have to determine the value of those. So there's lots of information out there.
And I'll just to add to that, there's a lot of great free online courses that IBM puts out specifically on data science.
We have that new AI program that is out. I will share that link with you, Taylor. So we have a new AI learning course that's available to the public. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we're at time, everyone. Thank you so much. It's been awesome connecting with you. Be on the lookout for more. I think we're going to do some follow-up events after the first of the year. So we hope all of you stay safe, stay healthy, stay curious. It's been great. And thank you, Rich and Shad, for coming and sharing your expertise.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. And if anyone has any questions or, we didn't get to your question, I'm sending my LinkedIn in the chat. Feel free to message me. I'm happy to be a resource to connect with anyone. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Rich, Taylor, Shad, thank you guys. I appreciate all of your guys' hard work. And thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.